Happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com. This is Disconnect to Connect One-Word Conversations. One-Word Conversations is a relationship building, self-discovery conversation designed to help you look at your language to see how one word can cause connection or disconnection. Many times we come up with all the lovely words that we can think of, and we still find ourselves in a state of disconnection. So if you're willing to have a one-word conversation, you'll learn more about yourself, the person you're speaking to, and you may even be able to build on your relationship. One Word Conversation is brought to you by IamWilliamBrown.com, a place to help you be yourself and live your life. One way that I spotlight what's available at IamWilliamBrown.com is our U cards. Our U cards are part of our Beyond the Shell book series, The Journey to Stay You and Finding You Beyond What Protects You. The U cards that I picked for today to set the intentions are I am unique, you are complete, and the quote card is before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. That's Jeremiah 1:5. Well, this is the moment where I invite you to like, share, ask questions, comments, do all those things to let me know that you are a part of the conversation also. This is the second time this week where I invited a guest in and they asked that they would get the word live on the air. So I am going to introduce my guests and then we'll introduce our word.
Oh boy.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Now, so I give you one word that causes a disconnect for me.
What is that?
It's like, I'm like, she's like, you're like, we're all like.
Right.
I'm sorry. Even newscasters, professional broadcasters. My mother was an English teacher.
Okay.
And they're just words, and verbs. I hadn't ran to the store. Okay. Let me explain the concept of helping verbs. Hadn't, run. Yeah.
Wow. So this is the moment where I invite my guests to introduce themselves however they would like.
Oh, okay. I am the mental health comedian. I was a writer for The Tonight Show for 20 years. I have been a speaker and comedian for 35. I speak on suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety issue. People often ask me, wait a minute now, comedian, suicide? How does that go? Well, depression and suicide run in my family. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. I screamed for days. And I myself have come close enough to dying by suicide that I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. Spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger.
Wow. Okay. So
yeah, and I have 5 TED Talks and just book number 6.
Wow. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So this is the moment where I will introduce our word. Our word for this conversation is judgment.
Yay.
And so the question of the morning is, how does judgment land for you?
Well, if it is in a lawsuit, then it lands pretty hard because they're going to take my money. I work out at a gym, or used to work out at a gym. Pursuit? No, that's I can't think of the gym's name. I can see that purple and gold. Planet Fitness.
Planet Fitness, right? Okay.
And signs all over the wall. Non-judgment zone.
Right.
So you're not supposed to be judging McJudgerson of the people around you. And you know what? It actually works. Right. I've seen people in that Planet Fitness of all sizes that you don't really often see in a more hardcore judgment-filled
judgment zone gyms, right?
Yeah, judgment zone. Yeah. So it's well, I guess in judgment also could be, common sense. I've worked with a goodly number of comedians. All of them, well, let's just say none of them stupid. Some of them absolutely no common sense or judgment, but not stupid. So
right. I totally I get that. The one thing that I say within my coaching, what judgment free zone is, for me is, judgments can come, but they're free to go, right? And so recognizing that, you are going to have a judgment about something, right?
Everything, I think.
But if you allow that judgment, or when we allow that judgment to kind of cause us from connecting with people, then that's where the disconnection happens. That's when it can go sideways, as they say.
Man, I've had a goodly number of those judgment moments in the last 4 years. Yeah, a connect became a disconnect based on somebody's judgment or my judgment or both our judgments.
And what do you think since it's, I mean, in some cases judgments are like opinions, right? Everybody has them, right?
Yeah, and the smell is the rest of that
and,
joke.
and right, and the rest of that, I was like, okay, is there a part of that joke that I'm just not going to say?
Exactly. Well done. I was thinking the
um,
same thing. Is he going to
but
edit this?
but you kind of got the sense of it, right?
Yeah. Oh yes.
So how can we acknowledge our judgments, but ignore them at the same time?
I've stopped ignoring them. In this case, I believe that the two kinds of people. There are ignorant people. Ignorant meaning implying that you can become not ignorant, less ignorant, and stupid. And as Ron White, the comedian, said, no cure for stupid.
Right.
In the last year or so, it's not the booger eating morons that I suspect their motives. It's the otherwise intelligent people that do something in my judgment that is counterintuitive, counterproductive, based on whatever. So yeah, I think when the death toll hit 450,000, I thought I'm done. If I never speak to those people again or whatever, I can live with that.
So there was something that I was following, and then I lost there. So it is something around judgment that, I guess when somebody else's judgment is in question, then they're written off, or do they have an opportunity to come back around, or come to, I don't say the light, or it's just, okay, you have proven that judgment is not your thing.
Yeah, I ask you which news network you follow, and if you follow a particular one or two or three, then I mean, I have a political science degree from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I'm two classes away from an economics degree from there.
Okay.
And I do have a degree in labor management relations. So years ago, I used to debate people on political topics.
Right.
And I realized at some point that I've never convinced anybody of anything, nor they me.
Right.
So and every now and then somebody say, you don't want to debate. I go, no, I'll debate you all night long. Just find us a venue and get me a paycheck, and I'll debate you till the sun comes up.
Right.
But I'm not going to waste any more time, breath, or energy trying to change someone's mind. And especially if we're operating in, sort of two different set of facts.
Right.
Yeah, I just gave up. It's kind of like, I don't do open mic comedy anymore because I've been doing comedy full time for a long time. I don't do open mic political debate.
Right.
Most people, I know more about both sides of most issues, he said humbly, than most people know about one side of one issue.
Right. Yeah, I'm just really, I think for me, I'll have a judgment or something, but I am still at the point where I don't want to say be convinced, but will really kind of see the evolution of a thought, a feeling, a belief that I have. And if I hold my judgment so, closely or tightly, then I am cutting myself off, from people. And that, for a time that might be okay or fine, but there's going to be a point where it's going to be just me, right? I mean, it's like,
Well,
so
as I was blocking and unfriending and unfollowing people all over
right,
the social media, I was also friending, and rounding up my tribe.
right,
And I pretty much purged my personal Facebook of, anybody who disagrees with me on those issues. Some self purged, some
right,
some I just quietly unfollowed or blocked. So yeah,
right,
I don't really, there was a time when you could agree to disagree back in the
right,
day. I don't think that exists anymore. I think the republic is done. I think we're like dead man walking. I
right.
mean, the good news is I will probably not live to see it. But 73 million people voted for the last guy again.
Right. I mean, look, and that is I mean, and that's a judgment, right? It's
Yeah,
there is the indictment, right? Instead of just a decision. That's what I just heard, how it just came up. Earlier in the week I had the word evidence. And sometimes I believe that, evidence or facts are good and needed and wanted.
Mhm.
But sometimes when we hold too closely to those, that evidence or fact, we miss um, what's true. And so if so here's where I am.
Okay.
There is there's a conversation that there's a group. It's almost like the No Labels group. It's kitchen conversations or something like that. And there was
Okay.
someone who started um, that organization to really get people to talk, right? People on different sides to just kind of just talk.
Sure.
And the one thing that he said that was interesting about the time that we're in is that you have um, people reading two different books, facts, and speaking to each other as if they're reading the same book.
Yeah, that's right. That's well said. As if we're singing from the same hymnal, and we're
Right.
not.
And we're not. So how can we so the question that I have for me, without having a judgment about what people are reading, how can we get to read the same book?
Well, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think. Yeah, I think we have one political party in this country. The other is a criminal conspiracy with two goals: staying in power and enriching the donor class. They've never been in favor. They're only in favor of bipartisanship when they're in the minority.
Right.
They can't even spell bipartisan when they're in the majority. And so I believe we have one political party and then a criminal conspiracy. And so I don't think there's going to be a meeting of the minds. We can't hug our way out of this one. 73 million people saw the last 4 years in the unmitigated, poop storm. And still, in cult-like fashion. And part of it is the blame of what I believe is the only political party is their messaging is awful. And the other party's messaging is amazing and tight and to the point and bumper sticker. And, and they do a great job at it. So,
Okay. So I was like, I it's like, now I'm going to go here. Let's just say that, right? So
jump in, man.
it is really. I have a conversation around labels, right? And so I believe we show up more as our labels than ourselves. We let our labels be our representative, and so political labels, we show up as liberal or conservative, and then we do all the things that what that means. We show up as um, our race label and what that means, or what that means to us, or what that means to other people. So for me, everything that you said, this is my judgment around it.
Oh, you're being
Everything,
judgy.
everything that you said about one party, which may be true, and may not be true, um, there are there for me there are many times where the other party that has wonderful messaging um, is just a better manipulator than the other one. It really they're committed to, in my judgment,
Mm-hmm.
committed to getting elected and satisfying their donors, but they have a better message. There's many times that when we say things like Maya Angelou comes to mind. When people tell you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
Um, I believe there are political parties or political politicians who have certain labels that they tell you what they think you want to hear.
Oh yeah.
And so we believe that instead of what they're doing and how they're doing it. I can see many times where there have been a number of politicians that have said unity, said we're all in this together,
Yeah.
but will do things absolutely, totally against everything what they were just saying. So, yeah, that's a judgment. I believe that there is another possibility that we can get our act together for our country. I don't know if it's going to be in our lifetime, but that's my hope.
Well, and an example now, the new stimulus bill that passed the Senate last night,
Right.
1.9 trillion. The 10 of the Republicans came to the White House and said, "Look, we like the idea, but we think 600 billion would be plenty." And
Right.
one of the reasons was it's going to increase the deficit. So, it was pointed out several venues that they didn't mind increasing the deficit to record levels during the last administration for tax cuts. But when they're in the minority, then they're all about fiscal responsibility. And so, to your point, people are hearing what they say, but not watching what they do.
Right. And I totally get that. And what I am trying to, I guess, reconcile in all of my judgments about the information that I get and the
Yeah.
information that I don't get is that I can say, hey, the reason why people are doing this is because they're not in power. That could be the truth, or that can just be my judgment.
Well,
That could just
there is
right.
evidence to that
Well,
effect.
I know, and there is evidence that that's not the effect too.
No,
So
no,
yeah,
no. You cannot dispute the fact that the deficit went to record levels under Mr. Fiscally Responsible, and because of
absolutely,
tax cuts, money, most of it going to the wealthiest 1%. So
absolutely.
that's a fact, not a judgment. It's not, and I don't think there's any way to dispute that.
Okay, so what I am not disputing, but I am just also bringing to the table is that if someone believes that what they're doing is good,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right? Right. Look, you can say that's bad judgment, right? You
Well,
can
then
say that's irresponsible. You can say,
no. Good for whom is the question.
so yeah, good for whom?
Yeah.
Here's my judgment about how we're governed, and I guess the legal document and how the politicians are supposed to run this country, which is our Constitution. Um, there's a large part of the operation and the writing of that didn't include people that look like me, right?
Well, the
So we can
5H clause.
right. So we can, so I can say that the spirit of that is all people are have a right, and and we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that everybody is a part of this.
Well,
Um,
you and women at the time were chattel, not voting human beings.
Absolutely. And so there are still people within this way of governing that maybe believe that and don't believe that. And so we wouldn't have movements like Black Lives Matters if people really embrace the contract of the Constitution. And so when people do things every 4 years, or don't do things, then there is this feeling that, oh, now I matter. Now um, what you say means that you don't care about a certain segment of people, and we're just going to um, kind of act as if we can't work together. This is what I believe about the way our government is, and this is a judgment. This is a judgment call. This is a hope. Is that the reason why there's a lot of ambiguous language is because there is an expectation that grown-ups will show up and figure shit out.
Yeah, well, that last 4 years, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, and you can go beyond the last 4 years. And so we can get stuck on the last 4 years.
Well, here's the deal. In the past, there were a lot of sort of political norms and, the not written rules, but the way things worked in Washington.
Right.
The former president attends the inauguration with the new president. You only pardon people who deserve to be pardoned, with an exception or two. The norms, political norms, last 4 years, there were no norms. There were no guardrails. There was, it was governance by whim. And I don't know that there's a norm that wasn't violated, but it's not the law. I mean, it's just a norm. It's just like a social contract, a grace. Just,
So, okay. So what is Jim Crow? That was a norm.
No, but that was written into the legislation. There were Jim Crow laws.
Right. There were Jim Crow laws, and now we don't have laws, or we don't have.
Well, we still do. We still have Jim Crow.
And so I am. So within the thought that I'm completing is that there is an appearance that there is no more Jim Crow type laws that separate, but there is this unspoken way that people show up for each other and not show up for each other. So yes, that could be a judgment, or and so we can sit back and blame a party, a person, the laws, or we can grow the hell up and be there for each other.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. You are still being, the Jim Crow law still exists, just in another form. The activity of the Republican Party to disenfranchise voters, marginalized groups, voters of
political
color.
Parties.
No. Here's where your argument breaks down. They don't all do it. It's a false equivalency between the Republican and the Democrat. They're not. One is an evil empire conspiracy, and the other is a political party. And so that's at the bottom of this, and this is my judgment. I believe, based on all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that they don't both do it. You don't see Democrats disenfranchising voters of color.
Oh, okay.
Those are Jim Crow laws, just by another name.
So because the segment of people that they decide to disenfranchise or demonize is basically one is justified and not the other. So if certain types of white people are demonized and disenfranchised, that's okay, because they screwed up in the past and did horrible things as a people. Right?
No, I don't think that. Nobody's asking. White people don't get disenfranchised.
Okay. Maybe that's the case. Maybe those 73 million people are just like horrible people that have no judgment at all. And
But
so
they voted.
just, yeah. So, but they are seen from the, you know, 30,000 feet type of view here. They are seen as one way of thinking. They are
It's
they
monolithic.
are they are part of this cabal and this criminal empire to
Yes, wittingly or unwittingly.
and type of thing. And everyone, the 80 million people on the other side, are pure, enlightened, understand, want to do whatever they can to save the republic. That's your judgment, or that's the reality that
Well,
that only
they
exists.
they're not. I'm not saying the people who voted the other 80 million are perfect, but I believe they chose wisely, given the other candidate for whom 73 million people. And by the way, that is a monolithic group. There's a reason why there are over 600 right-wing radio stations and a right-wing television network, and there's only a handful of left-wing radio stations, because on the right, the group is relatively monolithic. That it's almost impossible to sell advertising as a rep for a liberal radio station, because the liberal is such a big tent. They don't have that much in common other than they're Democrats or liberals.
Wow.
On the right, that's why the advertisers go to right-wing radio and right-wing television, because that's their audience. The vast majority of those people believe the same way, buy the same products, and I mean, that's not a judgment. that's radio.
It is still. I think the one thing that's fascinating about this conversation for me is that there are statements that it feels like that they are like in cement, and that they are they came from this mountain, and that's just what they are. And it's like, that's an amazing book to read, right?
They are, since Reagan and trickle down economics and supply side economics, which never works, but every
Right.
Republican administration drags us down that road again. Well, growth will cover the deficit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it started with Reagan. He was a figurehead. He was an actor. He was a brilliant communicator.
Right.
I don't think he should have been president, but then came George Bush, and I thought, well, Reagan's not bad. And then came Trump, and I'm like, dear God, I never thought George W. Bush would look good to me, but yeah, it's there. The mistake the Democrats have made up until this point, and Joe Biden has reversed the trend, is believing the Republicans want a grand bargain. And Obama made that mistake with Obamacare. They debated that thing for a year trying to get bipartisan support, and they didn't get it. And it's not perfect. It's good, but it could have been better if Obama had known the Republicans didn't give a dang. And Biden knows. That's why they just rammed through the $1.9 trillion stimulus. Like, okay, guys got ideas? Let's hear them. Oh, we're not going to knock it down by 2/3. We're going to ram this through because we're in the majority now. Hello.
Yeah, I think here's a question that Melissa has, and so that I've been trying to work through within this conversation here. Is there a difference between judgment and discernment? Do you see any light in between that, or is it just is that the same thing?
I think discernment leads to judgment. You discern something, and then you make a judgment. I discerned that the Republicans, George W. Bush's two administrations, tanked the economy, almost killed me. That's why I had a gun in my mouth. And so I was prepared for the end of this administration, knowing that every time those people take the White House and Congress, we end up in a recession. So I was ready this time. Wasn't going to make that mistake again. Every time a Democrat comes in, the economy grows. Things get better. Deficits go down. Abortions go down. And then, so I'm just telling your listeners, brace yourself for the next Republican administration, because that's usually followed by a recession.
So,
I just turned that, then I made that judgment.
It's interesting. I had a conversation, and I've shared this a number of years ago with my now adult son after one of his civics classes, and I asked him how his day went, and he was telling me about the government, and he said, I think I know the answer for a successful country, right, in the world. And it's like, oh, okay, that's great. And he said, we need a nice dictator. And I was like, excuse me?
Benevolent dictator. That's a
Right.
thing.
And he was like, that's what's needed. And I was like, I was floored by my my son's response. And now I am not surprised that not only my son thought that when he was 16 years old, but there's a lot of people that's their judgment about
Oh
how
yeah,
to be governed,
they'd rather
and
have a
that will
strong
make a
idiot,
difference.
than a weak guy who's really smart. Um,
And
it's
so just be a nice guy, and I'll just tell you what to do all the time, and we're good.
yeah. I just saw this morning somebody saying, Trump was the first president not to start a war. Okay, well, and Hitler liked dogs.
Right.
It's just one part of his
Right.
personality.
Look, I think as I introduced in before, the more that we stay on our labels, the more that we see show up and see the world through our labels, the more that we miss each other.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, I agree.
and so it is, how can I so look, I didn't vote for um, with the 73 million. Let's just say that.
I would hope not, being African
Uh,
American.
and that's another judgment there. So because you because of your, I guess, your discernment, right, that leads you to that judgment.
Well, the fact that he and his father were charged by the Justice Department in the 70s for refusing to rent to anybody of color.
Right.
And they were found guilty and paid a large fine. So it's not just my discernment or my judgment. It's
Right.
the Justice Department.
And there was nothing on the other side that caused pause about how the current president spoke about African Americans and done policies with African Americans. There's nothing in his history as a legislator that would even cause me as a Black person to be concerned or question where he is now, or where he has been in his political career. So
I'm sure there may have been legislation that he put his name on, but he was not convicted by the Justice Department of discriminating and turning people of color away from their luxury apartments.
Oh, okay. So,
I mean,
all right.
Nobody's perfect,
I'm not expecting anybody to be perfect, but to have a judgment about something, there is a discernment. Look for me, there has been a number of people in my family that have been arrested for nothing.
Really?
Right? So
judgment.
So
are you sure there wasn't something?
I
mean, other than being Black.
I guess with not getting into their cases, and they weren't perfect at all, but the level of force and conviction that was placed on them may have been just because they were Black and nothing to do with any laws. So for me, someone just getting convicted for something is not just oh, okay, well, the Justice Department convicted someone, so that must mean that everything that the Justice Department said and came up with was the truth. Could have been, absolutely. But without, for me, having more information or more an understanding of everything that was going on and how it was being seen, I can't just make I can't just make a judgment that way.
Oh, well, you know what?
Um,
I can. And
well,
he has a
absolutely.
he has a history of
Abs-
misogyny and racism. You know, it's not just one. It wasn't like he was just blackface at a fraternity party in 1970.
no, that's okay.
What's okay?
Oh, blackface in the 70s. Those, that's a pass, right? Okay.
Well, it depends. I think there should be two things. One, a
It
statute of
depends on
limit.
if it's a Republican or it's a Democrat.
No, it depends on. I think there should be a statute of limitation on behavior like that,
Oh, okay.
where there's no legalities involved. And
Right.
B, let's look at how he's behaved and what he's done in the interim.
Right.
You know, he's now the governor of Virginia, and I imagine he's done quite a lot of good. So let's take a look at the whole, as you would say, let's take a look at the whole picture. Wasn't there some good he did besides
Right.
the whole blackface thing in the 70s?
Absolutely. And I think there is this look, if I only see you as your labels, whatever labels I choose to see, there how I relate to you, how I listen to you, how I speak of you will be a certain way.
Sure.
Until I really embrace you and recognize who you are individually outside of what you've done and not done, then it is just, I think it's a judgment with not out without all the information that is available, because you may show up as a lovely person to everyone else but me.
Sure.
So all that I see is that you're not that. And so however you show up, whatever nice things that you do means absolutely nothing to me. And I'll tell everybody that you're an SOB no matter how many nice things that you said or
Sure.
do all that type of thing. And so when we get that way, when we hold on to that judgment, in my opinion, when we hold on to that judgment to a point where when people become caricatures and not people anymore, then we can do anything. We can blame them for anything.
Seems a little simplistic. I think, let me look at their entire record from the time they were in blackface in college. You know, what happened after that? Well, where did he go? What did he do? I mean, has he repeated the behavior? Has have people heard him using racist language?
Right.
I mean, I think that's a bit simplistic. B,
Right.
the world's moving fast. You got to make snap
Right.
judgments on people.
There is, well, before the discernment or just snap, right?
No, For me, I'm telling you, it's part of my mental illness. It's intuition.
Right.
It's,
Got
I mean,
it. I got it.
I can walk by somebody and go, oh God. And just the jackass is coming off them in waves. It's actually a trick. It's called from a mentalist. It's called a quick read. You look them up and down, you listen to them, you look how they're dressed, how they act. In a split second, you make a decision. Now, 75% of the time I'm right, 25% of the time I'm wrong, but it's a judgment. And I get paid to make judgments. A comic's job. I'm judging every joke I've got is judging somebody. Me, the rent-a-car company, airline.
Right.
Try to do comedy without judgment.
There is, yeah. Well, and I think within comedy, I think, because I had some time on the stage with acting, and there's some judgments, reading the audience, and all that other kind of stuff that happens that you have to be aware of on everything. But I think a lot of what we've been talking about and what I'm, wrestling, it's, this is just one of many conversations, and it may have seemed that it was kind of in defense of something, but just trying to understand something. I totally get snap judgments. I totally get the need for and recognition that, hey, 75% of the time I am right and 25% that I am wrong. I get that. And I think that's on paper, that's that's a great stat to have. However, from my experience, from my information that I received, there are people that look like me that have died in that 25% that you're okay with,
Why,
right?
why, why would I be?
Um,
Why would I be
right.
okay with that?
It's so I'm just saying that there are some people that have that snap judgment about someone.
Oh yeah, if you're a police officer
Okay.
and the guy's African American running away, you might not want to shoot him in the back.
Right. I mean, so I think in some cases, I think you missed my quick
Well, you just said I was
retort.
okay with with people who look like you getting killed.
Right. It is what I'm saying that is because we look at the number for 75% of the time, my judgment is good.
Yeah.
Right. So in that 25% of the time when it's not, there are some things that there are some tragedies. I won't use killed, right? Okay, I will use there are some very difficult moments in that 25% that show up in for other people that I think it's worth taking a little bit more time
Okay, here's the
than a
problem with
snap.
that. Evolutionarily, the people who survive, the people who do survive,
Right,
are the people who pretty much run on our number one natural instinct drive is to survive.
right,
There are people who, when the hair on the back of their neck stands up, myself included,
right,
and even if I haven't seen danger, that I can, consciously, I
right,
take the message seriously. I make a snap judgment. There's danger nearby.
right,
So making snap judgments, intuition, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a whole book on it called Blink. The people that survived caveman times
right.
made snap judgments, and took whatever visceral signs they received seriously. So yeah, I think I hate to give up that part of my survival instinct.
That I think that's a key part of the for survival for everything. But if that is something that um, I'll use for myself, if that's something that I lean on and look on as a way of operation,
Hmm?
then it doesn't. Um, there's only way for me how I'm processing it. Then I'm always in the survival mode. I'm not in, and I think there are other modes than just survival. I'm not looking for danger every place around the corner. That I need to make a snap judgment about something. And I think there is some deliberation that will cause me to look at the evidence, look at what I'm seeing, because sometimes, to go back what we're saying, people are manipulating what you're being shown.
Sure.
And so you may think that, hey, this is a danger because someone's made it to look like it's a danger that will cause you to act a certain way that would now put you in real danger. And so, look, a large part of my coaching life, looking at things, is taking a second look. And it's like, hey, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work.
Sure.
And it's like, I think more than ever, it's my judgment that we 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 ask the question or we look again, because sometimes that first look is not what it seems.
Sure.
And so
My
that
eyes have deceived me.
many of times, but
My
it
nose never, by the way. I've
right,
never smelled something that wasn't that something. My eyes have misled me. My ears
right,
have misled me, but my nose always does.
right. So I guess so. There's more of a smell test, right, than
Exactly.
than anything else. I there's a part of me feels that we can talk about this for hours, and it's like there's another part is like I should have stopped this conversation like minutes ago, right?
No, I applaud you. I mean, if you're willing to stop, take a second look. And by the way, I don't walk around, on high alert all the time. I'm just comedians and police officers, by the way, because I tried out to be a police officer.
Right.
The connection is we're paid observers. We get paid to observe.
Right.
And that means look, listen, feel. And so I'm not
And smell.
and smell. Thank you. That, by the way, in comedy is called a callback and very valuable. Yeah, I know comedians that can't pull that off. I don't walk around, worried about my security or whatever, but
Right.
I walk around aware for the raised voice in the grocery store, the noise that doesn't belong.
Right.
It's kind of like keeping house when you have kids, apparently you keep house by ear.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden they're really quiet. You're like, hold on, they're
Right.
too quiet.
Right. There's something happening, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of how I am we have lots of animals, cats, I can hear stuff falling off the counter. I know exactly what it is just by ear. But I don't, if I'm in a store and somebody did an experiment one time where they went in the store somewhere, this is obviously a long time ago, decades ago, and in a retail store and racked a shotgun. And only a third of the people turned around. Now that sound is very distinctive. And that's the kind of thing where I would be.
Right.
I'd be up on the ceiling like a cat.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't walk around worried all the time, but I am aware. And I notice.
Right.
I noticed it's just comedians are wired that we drove by a guy one morning on Main Street in our little town of Springfield, and my wife's in another car. I'm behind her. We drive by. We dropped one car off at the mechanic. We're coming back. She goes, I was kind of worried about that guy sitting. Did you see the guy sitting next to the convenience store on Main? I go, you mean the guy with the bicycle, the gray ball cap, and the black jacket?
Right.
She goes, you drove by him at 35 miles an hour. I go, yeah, but that's
right.
So that's. But I'm constantly judging like that.
Right.
I do it as a hobby with people's jobs and where they're from.
Right.
I walk up to somebody at a hotel and they speak. It's called a cold read. They speak.
Right.
I look at that, listen to their dialect. Does it match anybody else? And I say, you're from Taiwan. I am, but how could you? Well, I made a snap judgment. Now, about 25% of the time, I'm completely wrong, but 75% of the time, nail it. So I've taught myself to be I'm actually judgmental at light speed. Yeah, I'm no longer in I'm watching Star Trek, not in the impulse drive. I'm warp drive judgmental.
Right. Wow. So this has been an interesting word for us to unpack. Is there anything that you want to leave everybody with other than you're on Star Trek warp speed of judgment, right?
I'm in the third season of Discovery. It's fabulous on CBS. I think I speak on suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety issue. And even though hardly anybody talks about depression, thoughts of suicide, if you bring it up, pretty much everybody's got a story. And especially in the pandemic, because of the social distancing and the isolation and the, no more schedules and so forth. So if you are concerned about yourself or a loved one, I would recommend a mental health, just an evaluation by a clinician to see, is it situational depression because of the pandemic? Is it something like me and my family?
Right.
And self-care, I guess, is what I'm, on the plane, they say, put your mask on first, then put the mask on the child. They don't say put the mask on the child and then promptly pass out. Right. So, because you're no good at that point. So yeah, take care of yourself and others would be my wish for everybody.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Frank. I really appreciate it. My nice guy label kind of took a pass within this conversation. But
you're still a nice guy.
Right. So I guess I have a nice guy and a nicer guy label, right? So the nicer guy label wasn't here, right? So, but thank you very much.
Don't be judgmental on yourself.
That's great. I will appreciate that and go there. I would love to say our goodbyes in the green room if you're able to do that. But this has
Absolutely.
been great. All right.
Thanks, William Brown.
Right. Oh boy. The I said in within the conversation that my understanding of a judgment-free zone is the judgments come, but they're free to go. Um, and there were more moments within the conversation around judgment that I really got present to, that I want to sit with my judgments a little longer than I do, because I just let them go. And within my discernment, I want to hold on to my judgment just maybe a second longer to kind of see if I'm going to make an action or a movement to that, or if I'm going to put it in cement, right? And kind of go from there. Um, there's a lot of things that are showing up within our country, within our world, within our families. And it's my prayer that we have discernment and we have judgment, but we also have love. So with that in mind, I hope this conversation didn't just benefit you today, but was a benefit to your life. I invite you to reach out to me at IamWilliamBrown.com, a place to help you be yourself and live your life, because the world wants you, the world needs you, and the world is not waiting for you. So go be you. Have a great rest of the day. I'll see you tomorrow on One Word Conversation.